afternoon, everyone. I'm going to present our paper titled Dynamic Pricing in the Presence of Participation-Dependent Social Learning. So this is a joint work with Professor Bing Shou from City University of Hong Kong, my PhD advisor, Professor Jianwei Huang from the Chinese University of Hong Kong, and Professor Tanir Bashar from University of Illinois at Urbana-Champaign. First, let me introduce the motivation for our paper. So think about our daily lives. We are using more and more internet-based online services. For example, many people are using virtual private servers provided by companies such as Alibaba Cloud, which charges about $4.5 per month. Many of us are taking online courses such as Coursera. So if we want to subscribe to certain courses, we need to pay about $40 per month. Many people are playing online games such as World of Warcraft, which charges about $15 per month. And many people, for example me, are using wireless services provided by mobile virtual network operators, MVNO, such as Google's Project Fi, which charges about $20 per month. So as users, before we make subscription decisions for online services, we care about not only the prices, that is the monthly fee we pay to the service provider, we also care about the quality of services. So QoS have different physical meanings to different applications. For example, for virtual private servers, many people may suffer from resource shortages and performance degradation caused by oversetting. For online courses, many people may experience lack of interactions or feedback with teachers due to huge numbers of enrollment. For online games, many people may experience delay jitters or packet loss due to many simultaneous players. And for wireless services provided by MVNOs, people may suffer from call delay or low data transmission rate due to network congestion. Then as users, how can we know the QoS of the service? Some service providers may claim their best possible QoS in their advertisement, but as we all know, the actual QoS may be different from the best possible QoS. So the actual QoS depends on two factors. The first one is capacity, which is the amount of available resources. And the second factor is the congestion effect, which depends on the number of users who use the service simultaneously. But the question is, the actual QoS is uncertain to users. The first reason is that the capacity is unknown to users, and sometimes it is even uncertain to the service provider. For example, for Google's Project Fi, it is a mobile virtual network operator, so it does not own its actual wireless resources. So it leases resources from 3 traditional mobile network operators, including T-Mobile, Sprint, and the US Cellular. So Google's Project Fi may not know its capacity to its users. The second reason for the uncertain QoS is that the congestion effect occurs when the huge number of users access the service simultaneously. So because the user subscription decision depends on the pricing policy, so the congestion effect also varies with the pricing policy. So due to the above two reasons, the actual QoS is uncertain to users. Then how can we resolve the uncertainty of QoS? This results to our proposed participation-dependent social learning. So by social learning, we mean that users can learn the QoS from past user reviews. And since the QoS varies with the number of participants who leave reviews, it is called participation-dependent social learning. So this figure is an example of ratings and reviews of an online course provided by Coursera. So we can see that for this course, we have about 4,000 ratings, and the average rating is 4.7 out of 5. So as a user, before I decide to subscribe to this course, I can learn the QoS information from the user reviews. Our goal in this paper is to answer the following 3 questions. So the first question is, how does PDSL affect user subscription decisions? The second question is, how does PDSL affect the provider's dynamic pricing policy? And the third question is, how do the results depend on the provider's knowledge of capacity, which I will discuss in this presentation? and the user's awareness of congestion effect, which can be found in our paper. Related work for this project covers two areas. The first one is QoS-sensitive internet-based services, including cloud services, online courses, online games, and MVNOs. But the existing literature does not consider the uncertainty of QoS. The second area is social learning, including pricing with social learning, and the impact of perfect or imperfect reviews. However, the above works are only applicable to learning over a fixed value. So in our paper, we consider a time horizon divided into two periods. The first time period corresponds to an early launch period, and the second time period corresponds to a regular service period. We consider a provider providing online services of ex-ante and non-QoS. By ex-ante, we mean that it is before users experience the services. And the provider can design its pricing policy for the two time periods. We consider a continuum of heterogeneous users with total mass normalized to be 1. So a user I's payoff obtained by subscribing to the provider in time period T is calculated by this equation. Here, AI is the preference over QoS. A larger AI means that user I cares QoS more. And this QI is user I's experienced QoS. It depends on the capacity C and the number of users NT. PT is the subscription fee paid to the provider in time period T. In this paper, we consider a total of 4 information scenarios. So for the provider, we consider informed provider and uninformed provider. So by informed provider, we mean that the provider knows the capacity C at the beginning. And by uninformed provider, we mean that the provider does not know the capacity C at the beginning. For example, Google's Project 5 may not know its capacity at the beginning. And for users, we consider congestion unaware users and congestion aware users. By congestion unaware users, we mean that users are not aware of the fact that the QoS is influenced by the congestion effect. And by congestion aware users, we mean that users are educated or experienced enough to know the dependence of QoS on congestion effect. So due to time limit, I will only talk about congestion unaware users in this presentation. We model the interactions between the provider and the users as a two-period game. So specifically at t equals 0, which is before the two-period game, the provider's capacity C is realized. And then at the beginning of the first time period, the provider and the users act as follows. First, the provider will set P1, which is the first period price. And then users will decide to subscribe to the provider or not, based on their prior belief over the QoS, which is denoted by Q bar 0, which is assumed to follow a normal distribution. I will introduce this prior belief in detail later. And then at the end of the first period, all first period subscribers will leave reviews on their experienced QoS. In the second period, the provider and users will first observe reviews left by the first period subscribers, and they will update their belief of the QoS from the prior belief Q bar 0 to an updated belief Q bar U. So this updating process is exactly the social learning process. I will introduce it in detail later. Then the interactions between the provider and the users are as follows. So the provider will first set P2, which is the second period price. And the users then decide to subscribe to the provider or not in the second period based on their updated posterior belief over the QoS, Q bar U. So for the two-period game, we will analyze through backward induction, which means we will first analyze the second period of game and then go back to the first period of game. So for the second period of game, we first introduce the QoS belief update process. So specifically, users will update their QoS belief as follows. So first, we assume users' ex post QoS perceptions follow a normal distribution. By ex post, we mean that it is after users experiencing the service. So QI is the QoS experienced by user I. it follows a normal distribution. The mean is Q hat, which is modeled as capacity C divided by the number of users NP. So here capacity C is unknown to users. So the mean QS Q hat is unknown to users. And the variance sigma square reflects the degree of heterogeneity in users' QS perceptions. So the mean Q hat is the objective of our learning process. So users and the provider have a public and common prior belief over the mean Q hat. It is assumed to follow a normal distribution. The normal distribution have a positive mean, and the variance reflects users' knowledge of various factors' impact. Then the key question is, how will users update their belief over the mean QS from the prior belief Q bar 0 to an updated belief Q bar U? The answer is our proposed participation-dependent social learning process. Specifically, users will update their common belief over the mean QS according to a Bayes rule. And our results shows that the updated belief also follow a normal distribution. And the mean QU is a weighted sum of the prior mean Q0 and user's first period average rating Rn1. So for Q0 and the user's rating Rn1, we have two coefficients respectively. In their coefficients, we can see that there are two important parameters. The first one is N1, which is the number of first period subscribers. So a larger N1 implies a larger coefficient for average rating. And hence, it implies that the average rating is more credible. So intuitively, if there are more users subscribed to the service provider in the first period, then their average rating is more credible to later users. And the second important parameter here is gamma, which is so-called social learning influence parameter. If gamma is small, which is 0, then QU equals to 0. This means that the learning process is inactive. And if gamma goes to infinity, QU will equal to the average rating Rn1. This means that the learning process will dominate the posterior belief. So intuitively, the social learning influence parameter reflects how influential the social learning process is. So given the social learning process results, we can analyze the second period subgame. So first, user I will subscribe to the provider in the second period if and only if its expected payoff is non-active. So note that this user I's expected payoff depends on the updated mean QU. And the provider's second period profit is the product of its price P2 and the second period subscriber amount N2. Then we can derive the Nash equilibrium for the second period subgame. So our analysis shows that there is a unique equilibrium of the second period subgame. And the provider's optimal second period price P2 star depends on the updated mean QU. Specifically, if QU is positive, then the optimal second period price P2 star is positive. Otherwise, it is 0. And for users, if the updated mean QU is positive, then users with high enough preference over QS AI will subscribe to the provider. Otherwise, no user will subscribe at all. Then we move back to the first period subgame. So in the first period, the provider will first set P1, which is the first period price. And then users will subscribe to the provider based on their prior belief over the QS, that is Q bar 0. Specifically, user I will subscribe to the provider in the first period if and only if his expected payoff is non-active. Note that this user I's expected payoff depends on the prior mean Q0. And the provider's goal in the first period is to maximize its expected total profits in the two periods. The challenge is that the second period profit depends on the updated mean QU, which is ex ante unknown. So because QU is a weighted sum of prior mean Q0 and the average rating Rn1, so recall that this Rn1 is available only at the end of the first period. So provider cannot calculate the exact value of QU at the beginning of the first period. So how does the provider calculate the expected total profits in the two periods depend on whether the provider knows the capacity or not. So in the following, we will first analyze the informed provider scenario, where the provider knows the capacity in advance. So before the provider calculates its expected total profit in the two periods, the provider will form a rational belief over QU at the beginning of the first period. So specifically, our theoretical analysis shows that the informed provider's pre-posterior belief over QU follows a normal distribution. And the mean QI is a weighted sum of Q0 and the capacity C divided by N1. So we can see that the informed provider can take advantage of its knowledge of capacity C to calculate its expected total profit in the two periods. Then, given this pre-posterior belief over QU, the provider can calculate its expected total profit in the two periods, which consists of the first period profit and the second period expected profit. That depends on the provider's pre-posterior belief over the QS. Then we can derive several key properties of the optimal pricing policy. So our analysis shows that there exists a unique equilibrium for the two-period game played between the provider and users. So specifically, in the first period, the optimal P1 star, the optimal first period price should be no larger than Q0, which is the prior mean. So intuitively, it is never optimal for the provider to set a too high P1 that results in no subscription in the first period. And for the second period, the provider chooses an optimal second period price, which depends on the updated mean QU. Recall that the updated mean QU is ex ante unknown, so the second period price P2 star is ex ante stochastic. Then they show the structure of the optimal pricing policy through this simulation result. On this figure, the x-axis is the prior mean Q0, which varies from 5 to 15. The y-axis is the provider's capacity, which varies from 0 to 10. So on this figure, there are two regions. The white region represents the case where the first period price is smaller than the second period price. This means that the provider will set a discount in the first period to attract more users. The blue region represents the case where the first period price is higher than the second period price, which means that the provider will set a high introductory price. It will happen when the capacity C is small or the prior belief Q0 is large. The reason is that when the capacity C is small or the prior belief Q0 is large, the provider tends to set a higher P1 such that less users will subscribe in the first period. So less congestion will occur and the first period QS is better. So the users will leave better review on the QS to attract more users in the second period. We further show the impact of participation-dependent social learning on the provider's optimal pricing policy. On this figure, the x-axis is gamma, which is the social learning parameter. Recall that a larger gamma means that the social learning process is more active, and the users can learn more information from the learning process. The y-axis is the provider's pricing policy. So let's first focus on the two lower curves, which represent the pricing policy for the small capacity scenario where C equals to 2. We can see that when the capacity is small, the first period price P1 increases with gamma, while the second period price decreases with gamma. The reason is that when gamma increases, users can learn more information that the provider has a smaller capacity and the QS may be worse. So the provider tends to set a higher P1 to attract less users in the first period, to induce less congestion and leave better reviews on the QS to attract more users in the second period. So then let's move on to the two upper curves, which represent the pricing policy for the scenario when the capacity is large. We can see that when the capacity is large, both P1 and P2 will increase with gamma. The reason is that when gamma increases, users know that the provider has a larger capacity and can provide better QS. So the provider can set higher prices to attract more revenue. Then let's move on to the uninformed provider scenario, where the provider does not know capacity in advance. Before the provider calculates its expected total profits in the two periods, it needs to form a rational belief over the updated mean QU at the beginning. So our results show that the uninformed provider's posterior belief over QU follows a normal distribution. However, here the mean QNI equals the prior mean Q0. The reason is that the uninformed provider does not know capacity in advance. And given this pre-posterior belief over QU, the provider can calculate its expected total profit in two periods, which consists of the first period profit and the second period expected profit that depends on the provider's pre-posterior belief over QU. Now we derive several properties of the optimal pricing policy. First, we show that there exists a unique equilibrium for the two periods stochastic gain played between the provider and users. So specifically in the first period, the first optimal P1 star is independent of the social learning parameter gamma. The reason is that the provider does not know capacity, so we cannot take advantage of the learning process. And the second period pricing policy depends on the updated mean QU. Now let's show the impact of participation-dependent social learning on the provider's pricing policy. On this figure, the x-axis is still the social learning influence parameter gamma, and the y-axis is the provider's pricing policy. So let's first focus on the overlapped green and black curve, which represent the optimal first period price. So we can see that it is independent of the social learning parameter, which is consistent with our theoretical analysis. Then compared with the right-hand side figure, which is the optimal prices for the informed provider, we can see that when the provider does not know the capacity information in advance, then its pricing policy becomes more conservative. Finally, let's show the impact of participation-dependent social learning on the provider's optimal expected profit. So on this figure, the y-axis is the provider's expected profit. So first, let's focus on the two lower curves. So they represent the informed provider and the uninformed provider's optimal profit when the capacity is small. We can see that when capacity is small, the provider's profit will decrease with the social learning parameter. Then let's move on to the two upper curves, which represent the informed provider's profit and the uninformed provider's profit when capacity is large. We can see that when capacity is large, provider's profit will increase with the social learning influence parameter. So we can draw the conclusion that the participation-dependent social learning process is beneficial to the provider if the provider's capacity is large. So in conclusion, in this work, we modeled the participation-dependent social learning process. We analyzed the two periods stochastic gain played between the provider and users under the participation-dependent social learning process. We draw some practical insights from our analysis. First, the provider will set a high introductory price when the capacity is small or the prior belief is high. And secondly, the PDSL is beneficial to the provider who has a large capacity. In the future, there are several interesting directions to explore. For example, we can further study the interactions between the provider and the users in the infinite time horizon. We can further study the competition between multiple providers. And it is also necessary to analyze a more general formulation of QS with respect to capacity and congestion effect. So that's my presentation.